Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Improv Autopsy. I'm Stephen Cadwell, and this is part 2 of my interview with SAC Comedy Lab's Operation and Education Director, John Hunter. John is responsible for my first foray into long-form improv when I was included in the cast of his improvised soap opera, District of Desire, which we talk about during this interview. We also talk about the early show, and John answers my Proust Questionnaire. Welcome to part 2 of John Hunter's Improv Autopsy. I do also remember that you came to a couple early show workshops when we were doing those, and you never performed with us, and you didn't stick with it, but I remember being impressed because I'd never seen you do long form before, and I thought you were really good.
I really enjoyed it, and I dabbled, done some with Los Angeles and Seattle with people very well versed in the form, and I just love the weaving in and out of it, and then the narrative aspect. And I remember I was very intrigued. You guys were very welcoming. I remember the group had kind of sort of grown a bit. People were sort of dropping in and out, and I remember Mike in the green room saying one day, it's like, I really think we should cohese more. I mean, I don't just want this to be a free-for-all. And kind of got the sense that he, and maybe Chris too, wanted to close ranks a little bit. And so I was sort of on the fence of should I kind of ask the guys like, hey, but also sensing that I get the frustrations with the dual format and the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I was trying to figure out maybe if I bought too much of that sort of management energy. So I figured, well, let me lay out some and let them build that ensemble, that cohesive ensemble. And it was great. I remember the shows I saw, it was like just fantastic stuff. Really, you guys had a nice interweaving in and out, even encompassing Lawrence, as contrary as he could be sometimes, it's like, we can make this work. So it was a bit wistful, because I was kind of like, I really would like to play, but also I wonder maybe if for a couple of the members, not you or Greg, but like, would I be bringing too much of that, okay, management is watching us type thing.
Yeah. Well, it's very magnanimous of you. I didn't know that. I didn't know exactly why. I thought it was just a kind of a fleeting thing for you, but I remember like, oh man, I thought John was really good. And...
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. And I really, and it's important too for people, because by that time it's like that group was, these are the guys. These are the generation that's coming now and is going to be the mainstays. So you want that group to feel like, we've got a connection. And again, that has its strengths and drawbacks too, because you've got this great core group, and we moved over, and I remember we did the tournament, and I remember SAC's team was Mike and Greg and Richard, and then we had a second team, right? To make up. And I remember it was you and Steven. I mean, it was you and Steven. You and Chris and Rob or someone. Do you remember who it was?
Was it Charles Fryerman?
Might have been Charles. Whoever it was, I just remember that threesome, you and Chris and whoever. It's like, that can be our team as well. It's like, wow. So we had this really deep roster, and it was lovely. And of course, as time goes by, people, move. They seek their fortune elsewhere. They move along, they get married. And so it's like, oh gosh, you remember, it's like, man, remember when we had, that kind of cast, that bulk cast, that core cast. And I've been there long enough also to feel the sadness when it's slowly kind of, but also to know that there are other people coming along.
Yeah.
Because when the very first cast, the original Sactors, kind of as a group, they formed a group. They called themselves House Full of Honkies. Really 7 or 8 super talented performers, and kind of the mainstays said, hey, we're going to go to Los Angeles to seek our fortune. So there were a group of us sort of next gen, and also some very experienced improvisers from other companies like James Newport, Lisa Fredrickson, Lau Moon, who moved to Orlando. But I remember when that first group went, a lot of people said, well, that's it. That's SAC.
Yeah.
And yet somehow the next group kind of comes along and captures an audience.
I know that you and Dave and many others are a huge part of why SAC is still around, and we just saw with huge closing up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, one of the mainstay theaters up there. Improv theaters, major regional theater, just recently closed, and it's no small accomplishment that SAC has been around as long as it has, because it very well could have ended when everyone moved to LA. Yeah. The towel could have been thrown in, and that could have been the end of it. We were very spoiled working our way through the ranks at SAC with the talented people that are there on music and on tech in the tech booth.
Yeah.
Because going to Chicago and some of the world renowned theaters, it's like, this is your tech booth.
Yeah.
This is the support we get from back here. Okay.
Yeah, it shows you, right? It's just the value, of the musician and the tech. And again, we've also been so fortunate over the years. I remember again almost mirroring the cast exactly. We've had musicians and techs where they're like, oh, they're moving on. Well, that's it. That's it. And then someone emerges and they're amazing. And so it's just this thing that it's an energy that the people provide. But I think people who vibe to that find their way to us, and we kind of look to recognize that, and encompass that, and just I'm super appreciative as well, because I'll be honest, during COVID, it's like this could be it. Chris was just a wizard at managing our finances and getting extensions and working with the landlord, et cetera, et cetera. Very grateful to all those people. Kind of weathered that storm, and again, great with the cast, and everyone's saying, all right, we'll kind of work on a tighter budget for a while. You get through that, and then it's kind of another general economic downturn for the last year or so, and that's affected, like you said, all over the country, but right here in Orlando too, the downtown fringe art space, right across the street from us, Church Street, just had to shut down. Even with grants and donors, just the logistics of real estate and maintenance and payroll was just it's daunting. It really is. So it's such a patchwork too. You'd say, man, there needs to be more funding for the arts, but it really does come down to your locale.
Now, you've done, I know, at least 2 of these, so I want to ask you about both of them. But I know one of the things you brought to SAC at some point was improvised soap opera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was the first one called? Because I think I know, unless there have been more than 2, but I know of at least 2.
There have been several, yeah. Gina was involved in a couple when I was in L.A., but the ones I was most familiar with were the one in the 90s at the original Comedy Lab called the Varicose Vein, which was kind of it was the Vein people of Vera Coast.
Nice.
That James Newport put together and directed, and then the one that I ran that you were involved in the aughts. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it. Oh, A District of Desire. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, and that was another big learning experience for me, because I realized, man, and I have to admit, the Orlando Weekly Review kind of nailed it. It was sort of it's entertaining, but neither fish nor fowl. It's sort of, it needed to be completely scripted and directed, or just improvised, where I'm just kind of shuffling scenes and performers. But I tried to strike this balance of, here's a lot of direction, but improvised, but within these very strict parameters, but have this as well. And I can see now, it's just, you're just getting in people's heads. Either you need to kind of, give them the whole meal, or send them out with a fishing pole, but you can't kind of give them half the utensils and a few things. And so the potential for me was fascinating. It's like, oh, okay, we live in a good-sized city. I'm sure it's a soap opera elements of the mayor, the city council, the political interests, what have you. But, and again, some great individual performances and people just having fun with it despite my sort of unclear, middling direction. And I having learned from that, I remember in subsequent years kind of thinking, okay, all right, I think if we had another run at this would be cool. But now these days, I find myself wondering, does that format even hold for a current audience? Is it something that they can access? Or I'm sure a lot of theaters are doing it successfully, but again, being an older generation, is sort of so many things that I think are, this is just common knowledge. It's like, it's not so much common knowledge now, or not in the form that you know.
Well, I think that if you just were to, instead of being District of Desire or whatever, it was the real blank of Orlando,
Mm-hmm.
you'd probably, because that's basically the same stuff.
A reality
right?
show, exactly. Yeah. That's.
What would you, when you think about it and you think that you could make a go of it again, what would you change from District of Desire? What elements would you change?
Gosh, I would probably still keep the the sort of the governance or the powers that be element. But yeah, maybe play more with there's the theme park element, the lobby for lack of a better word. There's the city commerce, and then whatever the little the little people, the boots on the ground. That the contrast between, hey, let's build another convention center. An apartment in a very rundown neighborhood is inaccessible to most people working two jobs. It's like, what? There's a couple of different realities here. How can we play with that, have fun with that? Again, it's not heavy social commentary, but it, like you said, it's going to be funny and humorous. And I would definitely just provide bare outlines and think in terms of, okay, we should see this milieu here. Okay, we can see that, and then just let the performers do with that what they're going to do with it, and let them build their own personas and character arcs and discoveries. There just needs to be discoveries in the scene that then, as a director, you take and say, okay, this is the next beat, rather than saying, oh, here's what I think would be a great arc.
Now, I guess I should say, I'm sure that a lot of people listening didn't see District of Desire. Hopefully there are a lot of people listening. But one of the things about it was that, how long, was it a month run, 2 months?
It was, I believe it was 6 weeks. I believe there were 6 episodes, so to speak. And so it was a month and a half. And again, as I recall, Dave generously agreed to say, all right, we'll give it a shot on a Friday 9:30. I believe it was a Friday, the second show of the night. We were running 2 shows a night, either 7 or 9 or 7:30 and 9:30. Or maybe 8 and 10 at that point. I believe, it might have been the 10 o'clock Friday. So, but it's one of the 4 weekend spots. And the thought kind of being, if it has legs and does well, we can revisit it. We wouldn't continue it necessarily at that point.
Yeah.
But, the trick with these is to find a spot where you can just kind of let it run for a while and see, because 6 weeks is a good litmus test. It's just to see if you have anything. If you can find something like, and again, a lot of the ones I was familiar with in Atlanta and Los Angeles were late night shows. It's like, hey, we've had our mainstay, so it's usually in the 11:30 slot, and it's just like, heck yeah, and a lot of them had a bar component, so it's like they keep the bar open. A lot of the veteran performers liked it because it's like, oh, it's something different, and they would run for years in some cases. Some of the Canadian ones, they would just run just for years and years. Performers would age, and their characters would age, and you think, boy, that's a lot of fun. But I think you have to have such a specific runway for that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of having those runways.
First of all, I guess at the time, because I was still a youngling at SAC, maybe just into ensemble or on the cusp of that, as a part of it, from my perspective, what I remember feeling at the time was that you were hamstrung a little bit because none of the leads could commit to all 6 weeks.
Yeah. So we were having people jump in and out, right?
Yeah, so some of the arcs or whatever that you're trying to create didn't happen the way you would have wished because of availability. And then the joke I make, which I don't think is actually true, is, but I know because we were continuing the story really as a soap opera would from week to week for those 6 weeks, that the second week you'd written a recap for anyone that wasn't there the week before. And so my joke was that by week 6 it was half the show, the recap. Just to get people on the same page.
Exactly. It was I'd made it way too complicated and intricate. That's a great observation.
But where I see something similar now, and this just occurred to me as you were talking, is because I just watched one, is the places that are doing improvised Dungeons and Dragons. Yes,
that's so funny that you mentioned that. Because that recently came up.
Yeah, it's because it's not necessarily the narrative that's continuing. Maybe it's a discrete story, but the characters are the same characters, so you can come to one and watch it, and you can come to another one and recognize a character that someone's doing because it's their D&D character.
Right.
And it's the one that they always play when they do the D&D thing, and so you get to see these recurring characters and maybe also see them age depending on how long it runs.
Yeah. That's very funny. The reality model that you mentioned, and also the Dungeons and Dragons that came up recently in a meeting of like, hey, here's something that I guess a couple of different theaters are doing. The one I came up in the meeting, I believe, was in Atlanta. I remember all of us kind of chuckling like, You told me 20 years ago that you'd get an audience to watch people
Yeah.
playing Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, again, and it kind of goes back to that authenticity, right? It's like I would bet all the money in my bank account that these are performers that love Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
These aren't performers that are like, well, what is it, a show? Okay, I'll do it. What's it about? So the audience picks up on that. I'm guessing a good percentage of the audience also loves Dungeons and Dragons. So to see people that feel the same way, kind of enacting that on stage, is gratifying. And so, yeah, sort of what is, okay. So rather maybe than looking outward to, okay, what are the social trends that we're just going to try to set, overlay onto our current cast? Like what does our current cast love? What are they?
Yeah.
What are they crazy about?
Yeah. I things that stem from those passions, I think, end up being better for sure. So I have some behind the actor studio type questions for you.
Okay.
So these can be, whatever we make of them.
Super.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. How do you get into the proper headspace to play?
I really, I like warming up with the cast beforehand, but even more so just kind of connecting in with them, talking with all of them. We'll have what we call a check-in, where people talk a little bit about their day or week and how they're feeling, any physical ailments they have, but really just trying to get a sense of, how you doing, how you feeling, anything you're feeling particularly inclined towards or away tonight. And we've got a pretty good rapport with the cast, I think, where people feel comfortable saying, I'd really just like to avoid kind of a moving bodies, or for, tonight I feeling a little achy, a little sore. I'm just not feeling it. It's like, oh, okay, we can accommodate that. Or, I'd really love to do anything musical. It's like, yeah, we can accommodate that. But just making sure that we're not kind of running out those doors to an audience cold, and having, that's, kind of a little bit of a challenge. And I'm guilty of it too, is we're kind of drawn to the phone, drawn to the screen.
Yeah.
So it's just really kind of getting that down 15, 20 minutes even beforehand, and just kind of talking and bullshitting, connecting.
I can't think of any examples, but from shows, but I for sure remember walking into the green room after some shows, or talking to some people after some shows, and being like, you know what, we did not connect before the show, and it really made a difference.
You feel it, and the audience does. Yeah.
Definitely notice it more when it's not there.
Right, absolutely.
What is your favorite get for?
Oh, gosh. I'll usually just say, name something that starts with R, T, because, I've gone round and round and round this, and it's so funny because, again, we'll talk to students and they'll want to think of I want something that's going to make them say something that it's like, you can do that. I mean, you can go down that path, but really you're just looking for a word or a concept, and you don't want it weighted. You don't want a good one. You don't want like a really good suggestion, because it's like, then what's the point? And kind of the corollary to that is, and I'm been super mindful of this for years, and I sort of try to impart it, kind of have an awareness of using the question you use to get the suggestion. Don't have that be the scene. For example, if it's like, hey, what's the best Christmas gift you ever got? Oh, a bike. Oh, it's Christmas Day, and I got a bike.
Yes.
Because then the audience starts to think, they want us to tell them the scene before. So they do that. So then the audience is going to try to give you funny, wacky things to help you. And then you're mad at the audience, like, they keep saying stupid stuff. It's like, well, let them know that just say a word. I mean, Jay will say that sometimes. You just say a word. Let's just get it going. Because even that is a starting point. But even more than that, as I get older and lazier, if I'm in the scene when the lights are up, I'm just staring at my partner, because it's like, that's all I need. I don't even need the suggestion. My partner's going to let me know. Yeah.
Absolutely. I used to have a get that had Walmart in the question, and invariably the scenes would end up being in Walmart, and I got so tired of it, I just had to retire that get.
Yeah. It's like, because it's such an evocative image, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your least favorite suggestion?
Oh, gosh. Well, the wacky one, the funny one, or the uncomfortable one, that depending on who you're up there with, we're like, yeah, no, we'll take politics. It's like, or we'll take cancer. Oh man, that's just. And so even if you put a real clever spin kind of on, oh look, it's the zodiac, and here's the sign of Cancer. It's like the audience breathes a sigh of relief a little bit, but you still are kind of treading down that path of give us some dangerous stuff and watch how we get out of it. It's like, that can go both ways. So I would say anything that elicits a response of someone, not necessarily in bad faith, but something that's like, oh, let me give you something that's going to be really hard. I don't mind a challenge, but I think as a cast, we want to be careful of, you throw us anything, we'll make it work, because we can, but then the audience takes that on as a challenge. I was like, oh, yeah, all right.
Do you burn suggestions ever, and what's your favorite way or the best way you found to do that?
Oh, you mean in terms of like, just not going to take it?
Yeah, if you hear something and you know you're not going to take it, do you have a tactic?
Well, I mean, I have to go, because I'm so hard of hearing, a lot of times, I'll ask for a raise of hands, which is good and bad. It's like, get you something clean, but also it's very clear that if you don't want it. So what I'll do then is I'll try to take some portion of that, It's like, oh, okay, all right, you yelled out a sexual device. Okay, so what's something else you might do when you're lonely? So just kind of try and, kind of get around that way. You get a little laugh. But the key is, and I've always tread lightly on this because I don't have that persona. There are some people that can berate the audience. I don't ever want the audience to feel like I'm like, that was a stupid suggestion, I'm making fun, unless it's just hateful. If it's hateful, then I'm going to say yeah. And fortunately, that rarely happens. And even then, with performers that can do it, I cringe sometimes when someone mocks the suggestion and gets a laugh. And even if the person laughs, it's like, we don't want to hit too hard. So my way of kind of dealing with, I'm not going to take that, but let's see with that same person, is there kind of a connection I can make to that? I mean, if it's Harry Potter Wizarding World, it's like, okay, cool, all right. I mean, because I don't want to do a Harry Potter scene. I'm that lazy. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, good. Is there what's your favorite spell? Okay, what does that do? Okay, disappear. All right, great. We'll take disappear. Something that honors the fact that, hey, I wanted to participate. And my other favorite thing is when I'm not raising hands, it's just like, shout out something. I hear something I think is close enough. I go, all right, we'll take this. And it might not be that, but when I say I heard blank, that's my, my coverall. It's like, all right, I heard blank. So it's still a suggestion for me afterwards. If someone comes in, so no, I didn't say hat, I said cat. Oh, okay, sorry, my bad. We did a scene about a hat instead.
That's one I think I've seen a lot at SAC, is the I heard whatever, and because you can retort with that if somebody is like, what's a suggestion? Dildo. I heard dido. I said dildo. I heard dido.
Exactly.
As the rejoinder, and then you stick with what you heard, not with what they said, because sometimes you even hear what they said, but you're not going to take it. So
no, exactly. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, that's another.
What's the current flavor of the week down there for suggestions? At some point, I'll try to figure out a graph of the most popular suggestions in different portions of the country. But Orlando was always interesting because of the theme parks, but we would hit some trends as well.
Oh, absolutely. Over the years, we've gone from Chia Pet to ShamWow to Ice Road Truckers to the Chuck Norris phase. I mean, it was just, that went on for years, I'd say right now it is, oddly enough, it is a lot of Disney stuff, a lot of consumer goods. People seem very, maybe it's the online economy that we live in, but so what's the latest thing you ordered from Amazon? A lot of toilet paper, a lot of beauty products. So we're kind of in just the shows that I've played, I've noticed, kind of this trend of when we're asking for some kind of object or something, or what's something you've acquired or interacted with, a lot of consumer goods. And that might be a function of the questions, but just sort of what's on people's mind. They like stuff. They like the things. Or they wish they could afford the things.
Yeah. All right. We touched on this earlier, but can you describe your onstage persona?
Yeah, I would say generally, it's not always the straight man, but it's, more a lot of setup for performers that I know can just knock it out of the park with things. I'm often the interviewer in one voice, in an emotional coaster scene or, a single person emotional. I'm often the straight performer, so to speak, that they can bounce off of. I do a lot of narrative, a lot of interpretive stuff for foreign poet, or if there's a universal translator, I'll be one of the experts. Again, I've got a physicality I can use, and I enjoy using it. And my character work is 3 or 4 characters. I just kind of toggle back and forth. But in a lot of scenes, I'm just kind of a guy. I work hard not to be a detached, observant, standing aside from the scene commentator. It's like, I'm a guy in the scene. I'm invested. And again, as you don't feel it yourself. I mean, I feel it in my body, my age, but it's not until I see videos or photos I'm like, oh, I'm older than a lot of people out there. It's obvious. I keep up. I'm spry, but it's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to desperately play against that. And it's like, I'm going to be, what the show needs to be. Because we have a cast a lot of times, I'm just sort of facilitating. I'm a point guard that's just distributing the basketball, hustling on defense, getting some rebounds. And if there's some nights, it's like, all right, you're going to need me to score 30. All right, I can do that. I can do that. But we have a lot of people that can do that. So it's nice. I've reached that point where even after a show didn't go great, it's like, yeah, I wish the audience had a better time, but we did good. We did good stuff. I'm not gonna. We have posts, and I always think, I wish I'd have caught that. I wish I did that sooner. But there's the days of just beating myself up are pretty much over.
Yeah, so long as you don't swear on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do not do that.
What inspires you on stage?
When I see someone, gosh, because again, being so old, I've kind of seen everyone come up through the years and worked with a lot of them. When I see someone go ahead and get their arms around something that they're not super comfortable with, or maybe not wild about, or hadn't tried before, and just embrace. And if it hits, great. If it doesn't hit, great. And I just think that's good. See, and that inspires me. Just like, okay, hop out there during the musical, take a swing, and for a lot of times in the shows when I'm inspired by something that I see, and it's like I'm going to push. The thing that I'll push will be something that is just for me. It's like no one would really notice. In the audience or even with the cast, was like, oh, you know what? I cut that monologue off a little sooner. I had a reaction that even more grounded and authentic. I caught a detail there. I reincorporated something there that was obscure. I brought it back in, and it's just like, yeah, okay, good. That was for me. It was like paying more attention, being more mindful, being more sunk in, because that's always been a challenge for me, just naturally, but also being someone who's an administrator there, sort of kind of one eye on the show as a business entity and one eye. It's like really just for those 90 minutes, man, just sink into it, sink into the show.
Well, is there anything that takes you out of it or shuts you down on stage?
Well, it definitely takes me out when I see something going on in the audience, some kind of disturbance, or when I see the tech signaling, or, when I hear, something creaking or popping backstage, or, a light flickers or a drop of water comes from the ceiling. It's like my mind starts going to, okay, how much is this going to cost? When can we get this? And it's like, I don't want it to, but it kind of will go there. The only thing that really sort of takes me out of the scene, sort of creatively, theatrically, is when I feel like the people in it with me have given up. And that happens so rarely. At SAC. There can be a frustration, or they can be we're all human, and there'll be the moments where, a scene just kind of ends with a dud, and you kind of clear off to the side, and your partner wants to click off their mic and just vent for a second. It's like, I can do that, but I don't want us to sink into that. It's like, let's pop our smiles back on and be ready to jump in, the next scene if needed.
Yeah. Do you have, if you're still using any, a favorite accent or dialect?
I mean, just my redneck guy. It's just, he comes out a lot of moving bodies, and he's just he's like every guy I ever worked with when I was digging ditches or pouring cement, just hell, man, just befuddled by the world, but I'm gonna have a beer now, It's just kind of this fallback. I don't do a lot of voices. And again, for years now, but certainly recently become more aware of on stage is, hey man, I'm a straight white guy. I am not going to be up here taking big swings, at trying to embody other people's cultures. That's not something that this is an object of discussion. Like, what if you're really, really good at it? It's like, I don't know who gets to say you're really good at it. I mean, there are things that the audience will respond to, but And if there's performers that think I can effectively embody another culture that is very different from my own, effectively and respectfully, then great. I'm not going to do that because I just don't have that kind of ability. There's so many other things available to me, so it's not like I've never felt like, oh, I can't do that. It's like, no, you've got a world of things you can do. So dialects, and again, sort of what we laughingly refer to as the safer ones, Northern Irish, Scottish. It's like, okay, I have an Irish Scottish heritage, so okay, I'll take of course I'm terrible at it. Dialecticians will, just chuckle, David Charles, you're familiar with him, when you shake his head, when I wander in and out of Cockney versus Irish versus Lowland Scots. And the audience is appreciative of that too. But again, so often I kind of default to just the guy.
Yeah. What is the most helpful from the booth?
I would say just the timely sound effect. Lighting is nice, but we got a great group of techs, and over the years they have really worked with me and taught me the benefit of telegraphing, which is basically if you're going to shoot a gun or break a glass, you really lead up physically. You don't want to do it abruptly, whip out your finger and then stare at the booth like, why is it? It's like, hey, you need a little heads up. You're gonna, shoot at a bird flying in the sky. You go, oh, I see one, and then you kind of load up the gun and you pick it. You give them time, and then even if they don't hit it, you go, oh, it was a dud. But when it's there, but the audience kind of sees it. I like the ones they don't see coming. Like if I'm drinking something, a bottle of beer or a glass of something, and I want to react. Again, our techs are so experienced. When they see the shocked look on my face and see me raise my hand above my head, they're ready. So when I don't even have to speak. When I throw that glass down and it crashes, it's so satisfying for the audience. They're like, wow. So I always appreciate that.
What do you find least helpful from the booth?
Again, and this hasn't been an issue really at all, but a lot of, and I'm sure we're not alone in this, a lot of theaters, some of the technicians are also performers, and they like performing, they want to be performers. And so they have a million instincts, and the instincts, it's not that the instincts are not good, it's just that you're so physically removed in the booth usually, unless you're literally right on stage with the performers, that by the time you can enact the instinct that you think, oh, this will be good. This is a music cue or a sound effect or a lighting effect that will play into what they're doing. And it might be clever. Let me throw that in there. By the time you've got that up and going, that moment is maybe past. So I always appreciate the effort, but sometimes it'll be intrusive, if someone mentions, oh, the cat's unhappy. And then the seat has gone on for several beats and then there's a screeching sound and then, oh, it's the cat. And it's a laugh, but it's like, yeah, that moment passed, and again, it comes from a good place, and it's not really something we have an issue with. We always want to work with the text. It's like, hey, how if there is something, how could we make it more immediate? It's a little bit akin to I think you were there at 29 South Orange when we got the set put up, right? The doors, and it's so seductive because there's a set with doors. So we talk a lot about this in class, during a scene, you'll see people ducking backstage because they want to come through the door, maybe even put on a funny hat or a wig. The second you go backstage, unless you've got like a full technical setup back there with screens and monitors, you kind of are cut off. You think you're hearing what's going on, but so often by the time you make that entrance with that thing that was really good 10 seconds ago, it's past. And so then it's just confusing. And so that's why, I'm a big fan of just hop up from the side. The audience isn't going to say, wait a second, how did this character appear? They understand you've entered from the outside or another room or something. They can go with us. But it's a little like the tech booth. It's sort of if you duck backstage, you kind of just got that one step of removal of the immediacy, which is needed sometimes.
Yeah. What's the best note you've ever received?
Gosh, there's been several, but one of the best is kind of Claire saying, you know the rules. Basically, we can't teach you to have that thing, to have that snap, that connect. You've got to figure that out. I did to some extent, along with definitely talk less. And this is something I've found enormously helpful in life and still struggle to adapt. But wait until the other person is finish speaking fully before you respond. Wait a second until after they've finished talking. And I'm sure I've done it during talking with us. You begin to talk over other people, right? Because you're excited. And so often and because we're used to that, we'll just talk until someone cuts us off. So I realize I've probably been doing that, early in my career, because we cut each other off all the time, and kind of realizing from that note, extrapolating whatever I've needed to say to contribute to this scene, I've said in the first third of that sentence. That's almost always true. And students will go, well, I need to talk for a while because I kind of discovered it. And I was like, you really don't. You see that thing you said first? That was it. That was the thing. And so that was a really helpful note of, just put it out there. And then it's okay. It's okay if there's silence. That was another huge note. It's okay if there's silence. Because your partner's a beat behind you, right? And the audience is 2 beats behind them. So it's never as long or as bad as you think. Rarely ever, I should say.
See, now my next question here is, what's the worst note you've ever received? But I want to posit for you to think about that note from Claire was the worst note you've ever received. Because I think you can rationalize it now, but I don't think it was fair, even if there was some truth in it at the time, because it didn't really do anything to help you. And I also right now I can't see any truth in it. Knowing you as a performer, I can't see any truth in that note.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. If you'd known me back then, you would have said, "Oh God, yeah." And also, I'm not giving a very full context. I believe as well. I want to be sure not to.
Sure.
Be fair.
Well, yeah, to be fair, but
because this is someone who's just one of the best spirited persons I've ever met, because it was in the context of me saying I want to be on the weekends, I want to what's going on, what's the deal, what do I have to do, so to speak. And she did follow up with, try taking some voice classes, some movement classes, acting, do other things. She said, have you tried stand-up? Have you tried writing? This wild, because she was saying basically build these muscles, because right now you're kind of locked in, and it's not really their job to give me endless time and space to figure it out.
Sure.
And the fact that they said, keep playing next gen, during the week, it's like, that was the best gift they could have given me, Claire and the others, And so it was basically saying, you're asking for this magic formula, right? For me to say, oh, John, just do 100 push-ups.
Right,
You'll
right.
be ready. It's like there is a connection with the audience. We don't have a formula for that. And the things that we do have a sort of a quote-unquote formula for, you already understand. So I was kind of getting to that place where a lot of advanced students will get when they come to me and they go, how do I be a better improviser? And it's like, if they're past all the obvious, like, hey, shut up and listen, be calm, but be confident in your own choices, or you put more out there, or, kind of got to that, a point of competency is sort of like, what do you need to do to be a better person? I mean, that's really, because really that's all improv is, right? It's just people. It's just people. We kind of go, we all do. We all go round and round with formats and forms, and this is great, and there's amazing games and formats, but it only works or doesn't work because of the people. Mm-hmm. And so it's like Claire was kind of saying there's an authenticity with people that you need to develop, who your persona. She knew I understood it as how to be funny, but it really was. I came to realize she was, your authenticity, your connected of your immediacy right here, right now.
Yeah.
And we can't get in your head and make that change,
Right.
So, and because I'll say it was so helpful in terms of this, because I did understand what she meant. If I had just, gone out and said, all right, I'm going to take yuck classes and, I'm going to learn to be fun. And it's like, it's not very helpful. My feeling, I appreciate that she respected me enough to say, this is, you're asking me. And so this is the thing. Here are things you can do, but that is that final part that's kind of, you're going to figure that out. Because she didn't say, sorry, you're just missing it, and that's how it is, kid. It was basically like, here's what I see as the part that we're looking for that we can't give you. Kind of to flip that, but I certainly also see how you hear that and you think, well, that wasn't helpful. That's legit. And I'm trying to think just in terms of what was maybe the worst improv or performing advice I got. It was simultaneously enormously helpful and not helpful is when I was going to LA, when I got to LA actually, and talked to a longtime improviser who I'd met tangentially through the years at tournaments and who had already been out there. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to, I don't know, LA, I'm creative. I want to, sort of, basically I want to be a writer. I want to write for comedies, but, there's this or that. And he said, you need to pick one thing and just drill in and just kind of forget everything else. And that was very helpful in the sense that I did focus. Chuck and I, my writing partner, did focus. And we did drill down, and within a year, got an agent. Within a year and a half, we're working on a show, which was a pretty solid timeline for back then, I was like, oh, okay. But conversely, in a different circumstance, because I'd moved out there. I moved out there with my first wife. I'd uprooted my very comfortable life. And it's like, yeah, I'm not fooling around here. This is, but also, conversely, it can be not helpful because if someone just is looking to be creative, wants to explore that more, and I tell this a lot, talk about this a lot with students, there's this massive field of creative endeavor. So they can get kind of focused on, I want to play in the weekends here at SAC. That is it. Yeah. It's like you've got this massive field of creative endeavor, and then slightly smaller field called improv, and slightly smaller field called short form. And it's like, and so there's all these overlapping Venn diagrams. So if you fixate too much on one thing, because writing a half-hour script is something I could study the form, I could study the medium. Again, there's an element that I just have to have of a sense of narrative and comedic timing and theory. Saying I want to be a part of a specific troupe at a specific place, that's a bit more nebulous when you get down to it. So why not open it up to, I'm just going to explore, and you get very, sort of poetic. Your muse sort of will begin to pull you. Like, I really like working by myself. I like standing in front of an audience and being funny, but I don't want a lot of people messing it up. It's like, oh, I might do stand-up. Same thing with writing. It's like, I don't want to be in a writer's room where there's lots of other people messing with my ideas. Like, yeah, okay, you're a novelist. It's sort of, or you're self-produced. It's so there's lots of different ways. So kind of it was simultaneously, it was great advice for me at the time, but it's also not helpful advice in a lot of artistic situations, a lot of creative situations where you say, no, just lock in on one thing to the exclusion of everything else.
If there were Academy Awards for everything improv, what would you be nominated for?
Ooh, I'd probably say like best supporting. I try to, I like. And that's I'm very comfortable with that. I mean, again, I can step up, but I've worked with so many powerhouses that I respect and admire greatly everyone I work with, including yourself, of course. And just love the things that they do, and it's sort of like, yeah, we can be a tandem. I can step into this, and it's always shifting, right? But throughout the course of a show, and you feel like, oh, okay, this, you don't want to say the audience's favorite, but like, yeah, this is the leading performer here overall of the show, and that's great. Just glad to help any way I can.
If you are remembered 100 years from now for something you did in improv, what do you want it to be?
Like one specific scene, or a general...
however you want to interpret it.
I would say just generally, if you were in a scene with him, you knew you were safe and supported. That would be a lovely thing for people to feel.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, for doing this.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That's it for this interview with John Hunter. If there's someone you think I should interview, or if you'd like to get in touch with me or any of my guests and can't find contact information elsewhere, drop me a line at improvbrain@gmail.com or check the show notes. Thanks for listening to Improv Autopsy.